famed Russian-born ballet choreographer and dancer George Balanchine liked to say, "The ballet is woman." What he meant by that is that particularly in couples dancing, the most successful male dancers understood their job is to support the ballerina, to twist her, to turn her, to catch her, to support her, so that she can do more with his support than she possibly could on her own. He said elsewhere that my job is to make the beautiful yet more beautiful. He needs to know her strengths, to showcase those strengths, and to take his joy from seeing others enjoy her. The ballet goes beyond the head, straight to the soul. It's not just about fantastic athletes with unbelievable command of their bodies. There's something about ballet that captures our hearts, that leads to wonder. It's beautiful, mesmerizing, and the athletics are nearly buried in the beauty of the art. That's what it means to cherish in marriage. Love is the athletics of marriage. Cherish is the ballet, the wonder, the art, the mesmerizing aspect of romance. Love in marriage is wonderful. It's the foundation of every marriage. But cherish provides the artistry. Cherish is even better. In just about every wedding, the couples will pledge to love and to cherish until death do us part. And there are plenty of marriage books and studies that try to explore what is love, what does it mean, what does it look like? But we're going to look at a different question. What does it mean to cherish? Does that word matter? Is it just an add-on? In the Jan Karon novel, Come Rain or Come Shine, a character named Father Brad answers the question, is cherish the same as love? He answers this way, I believe cherish to be a higher plane within the context of love, something like the upstairs level in a home. We're going to look at what that upstairs level looks like, what that higher plane of relating within the covenant of marriage really is. One of the analogies that might help guys get the concept of cherish is just to consider a guy who's in love with his car. He cherishes his car. I'm sure you've met a guy like that. When a guy cherishes his car, he wants to protect it. He's going to wax it. He's going to make sure he doesn't drive it down streets that are filled with potholes. He'll brag about it. He'll talk about it to everybody he sees. He'll want to show it off. He'll say, hey, come on outside. You got to see my new baby. He'll think about it a lot. He might even have pictures about it. And when he thinks about it, it gives him a lot of pleasure. Here's what you don't do when you cherish a car. You don't show all of the flaws. You don't think about the flaws. You don't point out the flaws. You want to show that car off in its best light. The Urban Dictionary actually defines cherish by using it as an adjective. It's speaking of somebody who is so incredibly wonderful that you would use it in a sentence like this. She is so cherish. And in a way, that's the language of the Song of Songs. Love is the muscle of marriage. Cherish is the heart. Now, I know the heart is a muscle, but just hang with me. Biblically, we can understand the difference between love and cherishing by focusing on 1 Corinthians 13, which defines love, and focusing on the Song of Songs, which celebrates what it means to cherish. Love, according to 1 Corinthians 13, is about being gracious and altruistic. Love is patient. Love is kind. Cherish is about being enthusiastic and enthralled. How much more pleasing is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your perfume more than any spice. Love tends to be quiet and understated. Love does not envy. It does not boast. Cherish boasts boldly and loudly. My beloved is radiant and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. Love thinks about others with selflessness. Love is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. Cherish thinks about its beloved with praise. Your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. Love doesn't want the worst for someone. Love does not delight in evil. Cherish celebrates the best in someone. How beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Love puts up with a lot. Love always hopes, always perseveres. Cherish enjoys a lot. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. Love is about commitment. Love endures all things. Love never fails. Cherish is about delight and passion. Your name is like perfume poured out. Learning to take our marriage from polite coexisting or even just basic friendship to the much higher spiritual call of learning to truly cherish each other is what this study is all about. Love and cherish never compete. They complement each other and they even complete each other. At times they certainly overlap, but by pursuing cherish, seeking to understand what cherish really means, we'll become better lovers as well. Husbands, your wives want to be more than just loved if you define love as commitment and hanging in there. They want to be cherished, like the woman was in the Song of Songs. Like a lily among thorns is my darling among the young women. You are altogether beautiful, my darling. There is no flaw in you. You have stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. You have stolen my heart with one glance of your eyes. And wives, though your husbands may be a little uncomfortable with using the word, they certainly want the concept of being cherished. A friend of mine who's a retired NFL quarterback was once traveling with 7 men, and he asked them, "How many of you believe that your wives love you?" Every hand went up. Then he said, "How many of you think your wives like you?" Not a single hand went up. Those husbands felt loved. They didn't feel cherished. And to experience marriage as God created it, we need to pursue a marriage in which cherish is the central part of it. Husbands want to hear their wives say, "Like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my beloved among the young men." Cherishing your husband will motivate you to pursue him, and it'll raise the temperature of your marriage. I will search for the one my heart loves. Why do some wives stop pursuing their husbands? Why do they sometimes talk about their husbands like boys, or at most like their husbands are just nuisances? It's because they've stopped cherishing their husbands. They're committed to loving their husbands, but they've stopped short of cherishing. The good news is that cherishing your spouse is something you can learn to do. As we'll see, God is more than capable of teaching us and empowering us to treat and cherish our spouses the way He treats and cherishes us. If we go back to the cherishing your car analogy that teaches us how to cherish within marriage, part of cherishing a car is wanting to showcase it. You want others to see its beauty. And that's what happens in a cherishing marriage. It happened for 2 friends of mine, Hugh and Kathy Ross. Dr. Hugh Ross is a Canadian-American astrophysicist. He gave a brilliant presentation at Second Baptist Church in Houston, Texas, that left most of us thinking that we were operating with just a different species of brain. We were mesmerized as he made it seem patently absurd to not believe in God from science alone. And he would draw out equations and throw out facts, not from prepared notes, but just speaking to spontaneous questions. And yet in the midst of this amazing presentation, he sort of let loose that he scores up there on the autistic scale. I stole away and introduced myself to Kathy, asked her to tell me the story about how they met and how their marriage has worked. And Kathy recounted how she met this brilliant young Caltech researcher doing his postdoctoral studies while volunteering at a church. She saw that he had an incredible ministry, but the autistic tendencies were holding him back a little bit. And Hugh started to ask her advice. And so Kathy just reeled off a lot of points where she thought he could improve. She did it with much more grace and tact than I'm about to do. But basically she said things like this: "Hugh, let's start with the haircut. You need to get it redone. And then we're going to talk about the clothes. Stripes don't go with plaid, and your pants should cover your socks. Not to mention you should have socks that match your pants. And try to use personal examples when you speak. After you explain a principle or a concept, use a personal example so people can relate to it. And this is really important. When you're talking to people, look at them. It makes a huge difference." Hugh literally took out a 3x5 note card and he just started writing it down. A haircut, pants, plaids, personal examples. Look people in the eye. Got it. So Hugh went out and got another haircut, telling the person, just make it look normal. Then he went to Macy's and he asked the saleswoman to pick out a couple outfits that he could just wear without having to put together. And suddenly his ministry started to take on a new significance and a new impact. And he was thrilled with it. And so he went to Kathy, who was very interested at this point, but she wondered, how could such a brilliant man be interested in me? And here was Hugh's romantic invitation. He said, Kathy, it's been so helpful talking with you. Now, I only have one day off a week between my postdoctoral studies and volunteering at the church. But would you like to spend that one day a week getting to know each other better? Believe it or not, that invitation was enough to melt her heart. They started dating, have never broken up since, and it's been an incredible match where Hugh has been far more effective than he would have been with Kathy supporting him, and Kathy believing that she's had a far more significant ministry by joining with Hugh and helping him be more effective in his ministry. When I described the marriage's ballet metaphor to Kathy, her eyes lit up, and here's why it works. They showcase each other. Hugh doesn't fault Kathy for not being an astrophysicist. And Kathy doesn't expect Hugh to act like a man who doesn't have some lingering effects of autism. Rather than having their love diminished by each other's imperfections, Kathy and Hugh cherish each other's gifts. They showcase those gifts, and thus they enhance their gifts. Together they marvel at what God has done. The two of them have become far more as a team than either one ever would have been as an individual. In other words, the beautiful has become yet more beautiful. This is the power of Cherish. Picture the end of a ballet performance. The male dancer supported the ballerina. He's thrown her, he's caught her, he's held her, so she could do more than she could possibly do on her own. But at the very end, he throws her perfectly into the spotlight. She nails her landing. The crowd leaps up in a thunderous standing ovation. And the male dancer, knowing his job is done, breathing heavily, slowly steps back into the shadows. He takes his delight in the fact that she is showcased, she is cherished. Marriages will simply change when that's our attitude toward our spouse. Men, ask yourselves, how do I support my wife just like that so that she can be more because she knows she's supported by me? Wives, what if your husbands knew that when they went out there into the world and then when they were at home, that they knew you had their back, you saw the best, you were supporting them, helping them to become more than they could possibly be on their own? A brilliant ballerina was once asked what her dance meant. Her response was funny. She said, "If I could tell you, I wouldn't have to dance it." And that's the difficulty of Cherish. Cherish isn't easy to define. We could say that love is the narrative and cherish is the poetry, or that love is the work and cherish is the dance, or love may cause you to wince and cherish will make you smile. But what we need so much in the church today are stories of couples who cherish each other. We do need stories of couples who struggle, who persevere, and who come out on the other side. I recount a lot of those stories in Sacred Marriage, how God uses the difficult, how God uses the challenges. But we also need stories of couples who find the sweet, happy spot of marriage. Those are the marriages that Cherish seeks to inspire. You know, if you go back to first century sculpture, there was Roman sculpture and Greek sculpture. The thing that distinguished them is that Roman sculpture was more realistic because it was based on real people. You would see pockmarked faces, you would see chubby people, you would see bald men. Greek sculpture was based on the ideal. They idealized gods, they idealized athletes, and so it was really the most beautiful, the strongest, in some ways even the unreal. Sacred Marriage was a Roman book. It looked at the realities and the difficulties and the challenges of marriage. Cherish looks at the idealized form. How can we be at our highest and best? The kind of marriages that inspire us. Most of us don't want marriages where we grit our teeth and tolerate each other just because God's word says we don't qualify for a divorce. Most of us don't want marriages where our spouses really don't like us, much less respect us. We want to be cherished, and we want to be married to someone we cherish. And I'm suggesting it's possible to get to that point if we want to, even if we've stopped cherishing each other. My friend, Dr. Greg Bledsoe, was a junior medical student in a family practice clinic when he was doing rounds with his resident physician. Eventually, he and the doctor walked into the room of an elderly female patient and her husband. The patient was close to 80 years old and wheelchair-bound. Her limbs were contracted with neuromuscular disease, and she sat tilted to the side with her mouth agape, drooling. Greg noted the spry energy of her spouse. He was alert, he was mentally sharp. Though he was equal to his feeble wife in age, he was in far better health. Greg noticed that usually it's the other way around. Usually it's the wife who's having to care for her husband at this state. Greg felt a common young man's emotional and spiritual disease who doesn't yet get what it means to cherish. I must confess, he said, I felt sorry for this husband. The husband seemed to be in good spirits, even while wiping the drool off his wife's chin. Knowing the around-the-clock care such patients require, Greg also knew the exhausting demands placed on his husband. He glanced at her records and he saw she still lived at home with him. This husband was her primary sole caregiver, and Greg found himself saying, "Please, God, not me, ever." The resident physician received a page and stepped into the hallway to answer it, which left Greg and the patient standing there all alone. And Greg felt awkward. He didn't have anything he could add at this point. He wasn't far enough in his training to really offer anything of help. The awkwardness was broken by an enthusiastic exclamation from the husband. "She's my fishing buddy, you know," he said. "I'm sorry?" Greg asked. "She's my fishing buddy. Me and her, we fished all over. We'd go set trot lines over in that lake over there. Yes, sir, me and her, we fished all over. We've been married for over 50 years. Greg stared at the man and was shocked. He was beaming as he recounted their history together. Greg reflects, "For the next 10 minutes, I was transfixed as this man, who moments before I had pitied, regaled me with story after story of his life together with his wife. It was incredible. What was even more incredible, however, was the change that occurred in me. Watching this elderly man caress his wife's hand, kiss her cheek, wipe away her drool, and joyfully recount their lives together provoked a powerful transformation of perspective within me. Gone was any semblance of pity. Instead, in its place, was envy. This senior citizen cherished his drooling, mentally absent, severely wrinkled, and elderly wife. And a much younger doctor envied the way this older man looked at, talked about his octogenarian wife. To the older man, wiping the drool off his wife's cheek was no different than when he was 20 years old and he would lovingly wipe a little bit of ice cream off after one of their dates. We live in a culture that is infatuated with infatuation. But here's the thing our world doesn't understand. Cherish is even better than infatuation. Real intimacy is being fully known and fully accepted, and you can't accept somebody you don't yet fully know, and that's what infatuation makes impossible. It leads to what those who study our brain call idealization, where you're relating to someone who doesn't even really exist. Cherish is based on authenticity, knowing someone, preferring someone, choosing someone, and creating a heart and mind that prefers someone above others until they're the only person for you. Cherish can take your marriage to a new place. You can learn to cherish your spouse. You can be in a marriage where you are cherished and make young people actually envious, though they might pity you in your state, thinking you've lost everything that love holds most dear. We can show them that cherish is even better.